Hello and what's going on, you rock and rollers, those of you in bands, those of you who just love rock. Welcome to the Tenacity Podcast, where we talk about all things rock. I'm your host, Gavin, with my partner in crime, Josh. Josh, how's it going today, sir?
Oh, it's going fantastic, and it's a fantastically beautiful day to talk about all things rock.
I concur with that, and what an amazing subject we've got today, but I don't want to spoil too much. I'm actually going to let my partner, Josh, let you guys know what we're going to be talking about today.
Absolutely. So we have a great subject to talk about today. So as you all, if you listen to last week's podcast, I got to talk about my favorite band of all time. And so today we get to talk about my brother Gavin's favorite band of all time. And that band would be none other than Bon Jovi.
Woo!
Bon Jovi. And I mean, anybody knows who Bon Jovi is. You've heard his music, you know about him. But we want to dive deeper, and I want to ask my buddy Gavin about Bon Jovi. He knows a lot about Bon Jovi, his all-time favorite band. And I want to start this off. The viewers would be interested in knowing, Gavin. So, what first got you into Bon Jovi?
Okay, so Bon Jovi. Okay, the first song I actually heard from Bon Jovi, I did not actually like it when I first heard it. Now, here's the reason why. It was not because I listened to the song and I was like, oh, I don't like this song. A couple of buddies of mine with my siblings, and this is back when I was first getting introduced to all things rock and roll, and I had a couple of family members who were singing You Give Love a Bad Name, and they were only just singing the chorus, so I had no idea, and so I got tired of listening to them just repeating the lyrics over and over, and they just were like goofing off with it. And so then I actually heard the song, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And that one song, You Give Love a Bad Name, spiraled an undying love for this band and all things that revolve around this band. Because it always seems like in my life, I have chapters of my life where I was hurting over something that happened to me. I could be excited about something, and it would feel like Bon Jovi had a song for that situation. And I would hear that song at that situation. Like, I don't know how, it just always seems like this band has always spoke to me in a way that no other band has ever been able to do. I've looked up a lot about the band itself. I love and respect this band, but that's like, You Give Love a Bad Name was the first song that got me introduced to the band.
Right. And man, Bon Jovi, I was reading about Bon Jovi I remember reading about a few months ago, and it makes sense too, because his music is so awesome. Their music is so awesome. I was reading about John Bon Jovi specifically, and he always, and I think every band should emulate this. He always makes sure that not just him, but his band and everything, when he's recording or when they're doing a live concert, he wants to make sure it's the best quality that he can give out. He wants to make sure everything from the guitar, the drums, the lyric, everything is the best he can do. And it shows in his music, and it shows live. And even to this day, I've watched some Bon Jovi live videos, and I mean, he hasn't lost. John Bon Jovi, the whole band, they have not lost a step. And you can hear it from their music. So I wanted to ask you also, Gavin, of course, Bon Jovi, they have a lot of great albums. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can get every Bon Jovi album, and you can just listen to them all the way through, because because the music is so amazing. But everything from their very first album to the very last album they had put out, do you have, and this will be a kind of hard question because all their albums are awesome, but do you have I'm tongue-tied today. Do you have a specific album that stands out to you? Like, what's your favorite Bon Jovi album?
I do, actually. So it is actually, Bon Jovi, through their history, they've gone through about 3 different guitar players, one of which is actually the guitar player's name is Dave Sobo, he is still the lead guitarist for Skid Row. But of course, he didn't do a lot of, I don't believe he did a lot of recordings for them. He actually was an unofficial member. So realistically, though, by history, the first guitarist would be Richie Sambora, which is an amazing guitarist. But my favorite album, and this is weird because Richie, I love all the stuff that they've done with those, with Richie on the albums. But the first album, one of the first albums they had Phil X do with them as a band was This House Is Not For Sale. And This House Is Not For Sale actually is one of their higher charting albums. It did better than their album Slippery When Wet, which was considered one of their #1 albums. Because in this album, You Give Love a Bad Name and Living on a Prayer on that album. And so it did better than that. And you get songs like Roller Coaster, amazing song. It was probably one of the ones that I went through a phase where I hadn't listened to a lot of their music. And I was kind of just like, I was missing their music. And this song was like what got me back on track with that. And then also the title song, This House Is Not For Sale. Two incredible songs. And the album, I don't think there's a bad song on that album. Like every song has it in its own right, could be a #1 hit just by the writing for that album.
Absolutely, yeah. I've heard it, and I mean, I concur. It's a great album, and I mean, man, an unskippable album, like you're saying, that you can put it on, and I mean, like there's not a song you'll be like, I'll go to the next, because I mean every song's really good. I think I mentioned this on one of the podcasts before when we were talking about we briefly mentioned Bon Jovi, and so I think my personal favorite album, and I think it's because it's the very first Bon Jovi album I've ever listened to in its entirety that I purchased when I was about 10 or 11 years old, one of those when it came out. But and it's an album you like. I mean, you like all their albums. The Have a Nice Day album was the first album. Yeah, it was the first album I ever purchased from Bon Jovi, and I mean, to this day, the title track "Have a Nice Day," man, just one of my all-time favorite Bon Jovi songs, and a song that's kind of underrated that doesn't get talked about much is a song that actually me and Gavin play in our band Tenacity. It's a song called "Last Man Standing," which is a song that I love, and that we have fun playing. And also, Who Says You Can't Go Home. I mean, just the whole album's amazing. But that was the first one that I got. And then, of course, after that, I started listening to Slippery When Wet. And then This House Is Not For Sale. I was also gonna mention too about John Bon Jovi. He is such an iconic name, and the name Bon Jovi is just such an iconic band, such an iconic name in the business, the music business. And John Bon Jovi actually, and I don't hear this get talked about a whole lot, but he did have a big hit that I like actually, and it's on my playlist called Blaze of Glory. But John Bon Jovi actually had a solo career.
Yeah, he's always, and the thing is, Bon Jovi, the band, originally was a solo career. So, in fact, it wasn't even the name. So Bon Jovi was picked out the name after the fact that they had gotten the band together. Because I believe, if memory serves correctly, they were going to be like Thunder something for a little bit. And I remember the secretary hearing the name options and saying, these are all dumb. Why would you do this? You've already got a great name in the lead singer's name, Bon Jovi. But yeah, just like an incredible band. Like originally, John had actually written the song Runaway and had already gotten it like recorded and gotten it all done. He was actually talking to a radio tower that were doing a show. They had a promoter there, and they were trying to figure all this out. And they were like, "Hey, you got this song Runaway? Can we play it?" And of course, John was hesitant. Like I think there was a fear of like losing rights to the song because it ended up on the radio. And they're like, "No, we're not going to do that." And so he plays it, and the song takes off. And so then he gets a record deal, and he does not even have a band. It's just him and a couple of favors that he pulled in from a couple of guys to do this song. And so then he has to call in a bunch of favors, and that's where a lot of the band comes in. You get people like Dave Bryan, who's actually a childhood friend of his, who was at the time in school to be a doctor, and his family was Jewish. So At that time, there was a thing where like Jewish really loved it if your child would go to a doctorate and get a medical degree. And so his mother was not happy when John got him to leave medical school to go be a musician.
Yeah.
And of course, then you get their first bassist was Alec John Such, and Alec he may not have stayed with the band for very long, but he was critical for getting the guys that they have in the band. Alec was a guy who he was playing a lot of the cover band scene. He knew who were the great players, and that's where you get somebody like Tico Torres, who, by the way, something I had to look up about this guy. Every one of these guys had something huge that they were doing. A lot of them before they played for Bon Jovi. Tico Torres had played for Chuck Berry and Alice Cooper and Cher before he was in Bon Jovi.
Wow. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. And Richie Sambora as well. He had played for, actually, I've got his actual list of people that he'd actually played for beforehand, because Richie was originally, before he joined Bon Jovi, he actually was trying out to be the new guitarist for Kiss, because this is when Ace Frehley had left. And Tico Torres had also tried out to be the drummer to replace Peter at the time when they were doing that. But of course, like, all these different people they've played for, like Richie had played for Alice Cooper, Cher, just these different people that he's actually been a part of. It's crazy, these guys, like all the people they'd already worked with, who were already towering names before they even touched this band called Bon Jovi. And of course, at that time, John hadn't had that kind of career. He had been playing for like clubs and stuff since he was 13. So he'd been kind of, just going through everything, building his name up. But he hadn't had these kind of interactions. He would later with his own solo career, but these were like, you could not get better musicians than that at that time. Right. And so these were already huge in their own right, coming together to make an even bigger band, and which they would prove that in their very first tour, which would be in Tokyo, and they were the openers for Scorpion. So they got to learn. I think John had said what he loves and respects Scorpion because they taught them how to make an audience that doesn't understand a word you say to love you. Right. So that was just amazing. But I don't want to get on too much on a rabbit trail. I just wanted to share that because these are the founding members of the band, and Absolutely. What each one of them were already doing that qualified them to be in the band, like almost overqualified, because this had not even, there was nothing really there except for they had a #1 hit in Runaway, and that was it. And then they go off and they go take these amazing next couple albums with Slippery When Wet, and then the New Jersey album, just going off on me.
Yeah, and our band name is Tenacity, and that's inspired by a lot of there's a lot of bands that give us that inspiration, but I would say that Bon Jovi definitely represents the definition of tenacity.
Indeed.
So also another awesome thing is you got to experience Bon Jovi live, correct?
I did. So I got to enjoy them now, one thing you have to understand, like I get this, and I'm sure I'll hear this in the comments. I know Bon Jovi's voice has been going out for a long time. I will still fight that he is one of the best frontmen ever. I don't care. But I got to hear him when his voice, I believe he was just getting ready to go into a surgery for his vocal cords. It was just right out after COVID had ended, and so, or the pandemic, where we were all in lockdown and all that fun stuff. Because I originally was going to go see them in 2020 in February, and of course that got canceled. And so thank goodness they rescheduled it for later on in the year, and I got to actually get to see them. But it was something about that really triggered the idea of a band, like trying to be on stage with a band, that I wanted to do, because I had no way of finding out how to do that at the time until, of course, my brother would find out my brother could play actually really good on the guitar. But yeah, it's just, there's so much. One thing I will say about them is that John has the ability to hold the audience's attention. It's almost like all eyes are on him when he's on stage. Mm-hmm. And it's not because like, oh yeah, he's the lead singer. No, he's able to make it almost a personal connection while he's on stage. And it's just an amazing feeling that you get when you're in a concert, what he can do and what the entire band is able to do on their own, in their own rights. Because every one of them has their own incredible thing, unique thing they do outside the band and then in the band as well.
Right. That's just amazing getting to experience them live, and no matter what era it is, it's amazing. And also, it's one of the cool things about sharing a bond, especially like me and you and the whole band, we share bonds about music. I mean, that's why we started a band, but also it's really cool. Like so me and my dad, he likes some of the bands I like, and me and him really bond over my favorite band, the Beatles. And that's another thing you have in common. So your dad is also a big fan of Bon Jovi.
Yeah, his album, I believe. So mine's Slippery. I like the Slippery When Wet album over the New Jersey album, but my dad likes the New Jersey album. He got to see Bon Jovi during their Rockin' in a Free World, which is actually another song that we actually play in our band. But Rockin' in a Free World, it's a Neil Young song, but it is actually it was an opener for Bon Jovi for one of their tours. And my dad actually got to see them when he was younger, and they were doing that tour.
Mm-hmm. And another thing I was reading, it said I read something that said Bon Jovi's only Grammy award came in 2006. They won Best Country Collaboration.
Yes.
With Who Says You Can't Go Home with Jennifer Needles. And I just thought, and which by the way, well deserved, because I loved that song and it was a great collaboration. But I did not, that's something that I did not know. I just assumed that, oh man, I'm sure they won a lot of awards. And then I was shocked to learn that 2006 was the only time they won a Grammy.
Yeah. Well, it's the first rock song to not only get a Grammy, but also to reach number one on the country side of music. So it's a rock song at first and foremost, but it's also it's done in such a way, and that's what I love about John is that if you listen to a lot of their older stuff, it's very hard rock. It's very it's got this amazing depth and feel to it. There's the synth that's coming from the piano, it's very heartfelt rock. And then you get, as he gets older, his subjects become more even further in depth because as he's growing older. But you also see this change in tone in the guitars, where it's got more of a twangier sound, where it's rock, but it can also be considered country, because then you get songs like Who Says You Can't Go Home, which of course tops as a number one country song when it's really a rock song. And of course then they also get the success from the Lost Highway tour, which the Lost Highway song is an amazing song as well. Yeah. And of course you get the Have a Nice Day tour, which is where a lot of that came through. And I know a lot of those were also, I want to say those were still Richie Sambora was still in the band during those songs. So those were all still during his time in the band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just that was just interesting, because I was reading about that, and that was just really interesting, and of course it was long overdue. They finally were in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2018, and I also read that John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora were also inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2009, also long overdue, but very well deserved.
It's because a lot of the stuff was written by them. And one thing too, one thing I love about John is that John is very and guys, this is why one of my idols is John Bon Jovi. The man himself. I've looked so much. There's so many things where I learn about him. If you've ever looked up the most income made from any rock and roll bands, Bon Jovi's actually on number 4 of that list. Beatles is actually number one, and they're never gonna the numbers between them and number two are so astronomically far apart. No one's ever gonna really beat that record for them. Which the set number two is Metallica, which I know my drummer and our guitarist would love to know that. But yeah, Bon Jovi's number 4 on that list. But Bon Jovi himself, John, is very always looking for ways to improve. And that it shows in the way their music. They go from hard rock and they slowly adapt into this country-ish style of playing. And not only that, John's one of the things too I love about him is one, he started writing stuff by himself. Then he would bring in Richie, and there are some songs too that David Bryan and Tika Torres have had a hand in writing for them. And then also they would bring in outside help to actually help them write. There's a Living on a Prayer is actually written by them, and I cannot remember the gentleman's name, but he's a famous composer. They hired him to help them in the writing of their songs because when John is writing a song, he wants it to be perfect. And so he's writing these songs that they have to have meaning, they have to have heartfelt, where you get sometimes where a band will write a bunch of music, and there's some songs in there that just they just kind of fall on dead ears because it kind of doesn't have the feeling that you would get from some of their other writings, whereas Bon Jovi will get other people involved to where they can write their music. Their music always has meaning. Their music always takes you to a certain place. And there's always there's an underlying part chapter of John's life that's actually getting written into a lot of their music. If you've ever listened to the song Born to Be My Baby, it's one of their older songs. He is talking about, he makes a lot of references to God, because he's, of course, his response is, as far as religion or faith, he is a recovering Catholic, is what he has gone on to say. But there's a lot of his journey, because he doesn't write a lot about faith or anything, but he does incorporate a little bit of that into his journey. So there's another song called Bullet, where he's actually asking if there is a deity or a higher power that's listening to all these tragedies that are happening in the world. And then you get into Born to Be My Baby, where there's an absolute acknowledgement of a higher power because of the relationship he has with his wife. Like, this is, I don't know how we were able to get together, but God had the plan. And so it's very interesting. Like, you get to, he doesn't do that a lot, but there are songs that come up where his life is questioned, especially in this last one that just came out, the Forever album that just got released in June of this year, 2024. And a lot of it is based on him and his kids. One of the songs is a song he did for his daughter's wedding. Kiss the Bride, I believe, is the name of the song. But yeah, that's what I love about it, is not only is he able to make an amazing music career, but also able to incorporate a lot of his lifestyle and his life, his growth, his learning into the music they've written.
Right. And speaking of the last album, you were able to Forever, you were able to get a signed copy of that.
Yes, I ordered it. So I was actually one of the able to order it. Now I will confess it's not one of my favorite albums, but I will say this: you cannot beat the song "Legendary." It is an incredible song. I love the one thing I love about Bon Jovi that you don't hear with a lot of other bands, mainly because there's usually only one person who can actually sing in most bands. And one thing about Bon Jovi is that every person in the band can sing in their own right. And the harmony that comes from songs like Living on a Prayer, It's My Life, and even Legendary, these guys harmonize like crazy. And I absolutely am there for every second of it, because I've tried to do it. And I'm like, these guys, there's some talent that comes from that. And being able to do that, these guys are just, they're amazing in what they're able to accomplish with that.
Absolutely. And it's just amazing how just the quality, there's not one, it's all great quality. There's not one song that's just like, they could have done better. Like, no, they give it all they got. And you know, another song that by Bon Jovi that I listen to quite often, and it always puts me in my feels. I just love it. Is a song, "I'll Be There for You." I love that song.
That is a. I'm trying to remember what album that came out on, but that is a really good one. Another song that is really good, and I believe this one actually came out on the "Have a Nice Day" album, is "When We Were Us."
Oh yeah,
and that was actually a song they did on their induction to the Hall of Fame. It was that good of a song that they inducted. It was "It's My Life," "When We Were Us," and of course "Living on a Prayer" that were on that list.
Then another song. There's another song me and you talked about, and I have no idea what album this one's on, but it's another. I don't know how huge of a hit it was, but I like it. It's a song called "Because We Can." I like that song a lot.
"Because We Can" is on the album "Because We Can." That that's a great album too. It's that one's coming closer to I believe that's one of the last ones they released with Richie Sambora on the album, which is that was just before his unfortunate departure from the band, where a lot of that I think also had to do with he wanted to spend more time with his kids, and that's like the most, and one thing I love is the most noble thing you can do as a parent is make a distinction and make a stand on, hey, my kid's future is more important than my dreams. Right. I've already got to live. Richie is like, I've already got to live out my dreams. I've already got to do everything I wanted to do, but my kids come first.
Yeah.
Like that's like, and having that knowledge and that realization, like I've got to spend time with my kids. You can't, and that's why him and John still have a relationship today. Now there's, of course, everyone's trying to throw in this talk of like, yeah, Richie needs to come back to the band. He doesn't need to. I think he would if the offer ever came up, but does he really need to? No, I think they've got an amazing, and that's one member I wanted to talk about before, because there's two band members that have been replaced over the years in the band, which Richie Sambora was replaced with. Guys, if I butcher this man's name, I'm gonna give his nickname, but of course you got to give what it states, because it's actually initial. Josh, I didn't know this until actually today, doing some research on him. But Theophilus Zenidis, otherwise known as Phil X, is the new guitar, of course, the guitarist for Bon Jovi after Richie's departure. And Phil has an amazing reputation of like people he's actually played for. I would say probably Phil's got the best list of people he has played for. Chris Cornell, he's played for an album for him. He's played on an album for I'm gonna mess up this name too. Avril Lavigne, he's played for her.
Avril Lavigne.
Kelly Clarkson, he's played for Rob Zombie. He's played for Chris Daughtry, Alice Cooper, and even the band 1,000 Foot Crutch. He has played on albums for multiple different heavy-hitting bands.
Wow. And
the thing was, he was doing all of this while he was doing a bunch of just side jobs. He wasn't even like, he didn't really have his own band. He came to America from Canada because he wanted to be a famous guitarist. And and it would come in the weirdest times. Like he would be painting the executive's house or his garage, and they'd be like, hey, we need to do this recording right now. Phil knows how to play guitar. Phil, come in here, play guitar for this album. And he'd be playing it. He'd get a call. He'd be doing groceries at a grocery store, bagging groceries as a side job to make money. And he'd get a call saying, hey, we want you to perform for this show. Can you do it? Yes. And with all those yeses, he got enough of reputation as a reliable guitarist that when Richie would depart from the band, Phil would step in and finish that tour out, and would, after the tour, be invited to be the official guitarist for the band. And of course, if you're going to talk about Phil, you also got to talk about the man who's been behind the scenes the entire time, and then became the bassist for the band. So Runaway was actually recorded by this the guy who did the bass for Runaway when the song was first coming out was a man named Hugh McDonald. And if you know who that is the current bassist for the band. So Hugh actually had a hand in a lot of Bon Jovi's recordings before actually becoming a member of the band. Because of course Alec was the member of the band at the time, and they were running into issues with him. I think John was on record saying that we all try to pull our own weight, and at that time Alec just wasn't pulling his own weight in the band, and so it was time for him to make a departure. And so they brought in Hugh, he was the obvious choice because he'd already had a hand in almost everything that Bon Jovi had recorded up to that point. So it's kind of cool, the kind of stuff that he had done. And the thing is, Hugh McDonald too, probably second coolest list of people he's played for. He's played for Willie Nelson. He's played for Steve Goodman. He's played for Ringo Starr.
Oh, wow.
And then he's also played for Michael Bolton. He's played for Cher. He's played for Poison. And he's played for Alice Cooper, Ricky Martin. I'm pretty sure everyone in the band has played for Alice Cooper at some point.
What a resume to have.
I know. And that's why I keep coming back to why this band is so, not only is it my favorite band, but there's a reason why they're able to pump out so many incredible songs, and their performances are always on point. These guys have done this their entire lives. It's like taking I know a lot of one of the most popular things a long time ago was building up, like taking people who are famous from different bands and bringing them together to create super bands. I believe Slash was a part of was it Avantasia? Not Avantasia. But Slash was a part of a band like that for a while. But all of these guys are literally that in a nutshell. It's all a bunch of super instrumentalists brought in to make this super band called Bon Jovi.
Absolutely. And man, that's just a lot of great details. And and there's one final question I want to ask you before we concur this podcast. And this will be a challenging question, but so if there were to be a specific song, so a specific Bon Jovi song that, like, say that if you had to pick one Bon Jovi song, and this is hard, I know this is a challenging question, but because there's so many of them, but if there was a documentary and we got to pick about, maybe in the future there's a documentary about maybe Tenacity, or there was just something about you, just specifically about Gavin, and you got to pick one Bon Jovi song to be in the film, what song, in other words, what Bon Jovi song do you think you would pick that represents you the best? And I know that's a challenging question, but it's one to think about. But what would that song be?
If you had asked me that question about a year ago, I probably would not have an answer for you. However, there has been a song that I always come back to this song from Bon Jovi. It's actually not on my favorite album though. It's actually on the Circle album that came out in 2009. This song has been, I don't know what it is about it, but I went through a long time. I've always had a temper tantrum, bad attitude that I had growing up, and so it always felt like this constant thorn in my side, if you would say, which actually ends up being the name of the song that is my favorite from Bon Jovi, which is Thorn in My Side. It is such a, whenever I feel, they're reminded of the frustrations that I had, the senseless like anger that I would go through and just be. This song always seems to remind me of that, and it's like it makes me feel better because it's an amazing song about just the things in life that every time you start doing better, it always seems like there's something that reminds you of the person you used to be, and those are your thorns in your side. And you're gonna be fine. You're able to move on. You may not be doing like amazing, but you are going to be able to get by. And that's what I love about that song. It's not one of those that they play a lot. It's not one of those that, you know, has gotten any awards or anything. But for me, it always has felt like the song that John's singing directly to me. And for that, it's always going to be my favorite song. It's just always been there. It's always been one of those, like, if I had to pick any song I want to listen to over and over again, I would listen to it. It's got an amazing opening. Richie did an incredible job with that song, with the guitar opening. It's also one where John's actually playing acoustic on it. It's a great song. It's got a great blend before they started really getting into the country sound that they have today. But I would have to say it's that song, "Thorn in My Side."
Great choice, and that's a fun song that we cover in Tenacity also that we've been playing recently, and yeah, I love that song too. Great message, and I mean, you can't go wrong with that song. And yeah, I mean, I've been pushed around, kicked around. I mean, I think a lot of people can look at the words of that song and say, hey, I can relate to this. I think that's because who hasn't been through that, right?
Absolutely.
But man, such an incredible song. But man, this has been fun going through, because you mentioned some stuff that I didn't know, and I mean this has been really fun. I'm glad we were able to dive into Bon Jovi, and of course Bon Jovi, just like we did with the Beatles last week. Bon Jovi. I mean, if Bon Jovi is so good and so big. I mean, if we had all the time in the world, I mean, we could spend countless hours talking about legend that is Bon.
Unfortunately, we try to keep this podcast to about a 30-minute minimum because we can overload with knowledge, and we want to the whole point of this podcast is to celebrate rock, guys. That's what we want to do. We want to hear your guys' feedback. Is Bon Jovi your favorite band? I'd love to hear some of your stories that you know about Bon Jovi. You might even be able to teach me something that I don't know about them yet. And we'd love to hear about that, guys. We'd also want to hear what your favorite band is. Who knows? Could end up as an episode of one of our podcasts. But guys, that is going to be it for today's podcast episode. We want to thank you guys for listening in. If you enjoyed the music on this podcast, you can actually listen to that on any of our social media platforms. Link for it will be in the description. But until next time, guys, keep on rocking in a free world. Take care, everybody.
Have a nice day.